In the middle of India's Chhattisgarh state, deep in the forests of the Basta region, one can find some highly unusual ancient cave paintings. These paintings were found in cave shelters near the villages of Charama and Gotitola. They show strange, human-like figures with large, round heads, long arms and legs, and no clear facial features. Some seem to float in the air, hold unusual objects, or appear next to disc-shaped objects with lines coming out of them. Some researchers say they look remarkably like UFOs. The story made headlines around the world in July 2014, when the Times of India reported that archaeologist J.R. Bhagat asked NASA and India's space agency to help study the paintings. Just asking for help from space agencies showed how unusual these images seemed. These paintings show aliens like the ones we see in movies, Bhagat said. He suggested that ancient people might have imagined or even seen beings from other planets. While that idea is hard to prove, it's also hard to completely rule out. The images, painted in red ochre, appear in many caves across the Kanker district. Though simple and abstract, the figures all look surprisingly similar. They match the common image of grey aliens, big heads, thin bodies, and long limbs. They have no eyes, noses, or mouths, making them seem alien to us and possibly even to the people who painted them. There are no tools, carvings, or other clues nearby to help explain what they mean or when exactly they were made. To archaeologists like Bhagat, the paintings could be more than just ancient art. They might represent memories, legends, or real experiences that go beyond normal life. Still, many experts believe the figures are simply symbolic or part of local traditions, not real beings. But the fact that these odd figures keep showing up in isolated tribal areas leads to questions. Were they meant to represent spirits or gods, or could they have been inspired by something or someone that really visited? Maybe ancient people saw things we don't understand today, or maybe we're only now starting to recognize what they were trying to show us. When the strange cave paintings in Chhattisgarh were discovered, they got a lot of attention. But India's Department of Archaeology ran into a problem. They didn't have experts in areas like space science, alien life, or the study of possible contact with other worlds. While India has many skilled archaeologists and anthropologists, the images found in the Basta region seemed too unusual to fit into normal explanations of ancient art. That's why archaeologist J.R. Bhagat took the unusual step of asking NASA and India's space agency, ISRO, for help. He wanted their input on whether the paintings might show beings from another planet. So far, there's been no official response or teamwork from either agency. Still, Bhagat's request, reported by the Times of India, got people talking, both in academic circles and among UFO researchers. Some critics saw his request as just a publicity stunt, but others felt it showed a willingness to think outside the box. Maybe, they said, archaeology should sometimes work with other sciences when faced with truly strange discoveries. What makes this even more interesting are the local tribal stories in the area. Among the tribal people of southern Chhattisgarh, there are old legends about mysterious little people called the Rohila or Rohila. These beings were said to come from the sky in round flying objects. The stories also claim that sometimes the Rohila took villages away, and those taken never came back. Mainstream researchers usually see these tales as symbolic, maybe representing spiritual rituals or cultural beliefs, but others believe the legends could be memories of real alien abduction events from long ago. The fact that the cave paintings look a lot like modern ideas of grey aliens with big heads, thin bodies, and strange shapes makes the mystery even deeper. Some researchers have compared these stories and images with similar legends around the world, like the Dogon's Nomo spirits in Africa, the Hopi and Zuni star ancestors in North America, or the sky spirits in Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories. The legends say that these sky visitors didn't just come once. They returned again and again, each time taking one or two people from the tribes before disappearing into the sky. Whether people saw them as gods, spirits, or beings from the stars, the idea sounds familiar across many cultures. In the stories, those taken never came back, or came back different. This theme shows up in many places, from old Celtic tales of fairies taking people away, to ancient myths of people being taken by the gods. It's an idea that seems deeply rooted in human storytelling. Some experts warn against seeing these legends as alien abduction stories. They say doing that could change the original meaning of the myths, which often focus on lessons about nature, morality, or the universe. But others believe the fact that so many cultures talk about flying beings, strange lights, and people disappearing might point to a deeper truth. Even if the rock art is just symbolic, maybe showing dreams, visions, or rituals, it still stands out. But if it shows something people really saw, something non-human, then the meaning of the paintings goes far beyond these caves in Chhattisgarh. Either way, they are worth serious attention. One of the most interesting things in the Chhattisgarh cave paintings, according to archaeologist J.R. Bhagat, is that some of the figures are holding long, stick-like objects. He thinks they might be weapons. In Indian prehistoric art, similar shapes often show spears, bows, or ritual staffs. But here, it's different. These figures aren't shown hunting or fighting. They're standing or floating, holding the rods in a way that doesn't seem practical. It seems more symbolic, or maybe even something unfamiliar, like a tool or device. This opens up more questions. Are these objects staffs, like the staff of Viracocha, the Incan god who formed the earth, moon, sun, sky, and all living beings? Could they represent something advanced, some kind of technology unknown to people in the Stone Age? The figures themselves are just as mysterious. They don't have faces, no eyes, noses, or mouths. Their bodies look wide and closed in, like they might be wearing suits. Bhagat and others have noticed that these figures look surprisingly similar to the way modern people imagine aliens, especially in what looks like helmets or spacesuits. Of course, faceless or masked figures appear in ancient art around the world. Often these were thought to show spirits, gods, or shamans in ritual dress. But in this quiet forest region of Chhattisgarh, the mix of floating, faceless figures, rod-like tools, and strange suits makes you wonder, are these just spiritual visions, or could they be something more real? Bhagat doesn't jump to conclusions. He admits human imagination can go far. Still, he says it's hard to ignore how much the images look like modern depictions of aliens. So far, the paintings haven't been officially dated using scientific methods like radiocarbon testing. But based on comparisons with other sites like Bhimbetka and Mirzapur, some researchers think the paintings could be more than 10,000 years old. That would place them near the end of the Ice Age, during the time when humans were still hunters and gatherers. If that's true, these would be some of the oldest human-made images in South Asia. But without more testing, the age is still just an estimate, though an exciting one. In the end, as archaeologist J.R. Bhagat himself said, much more research is needed. The Sharama cave site deserves more than just photos or second-hand stories. It needs proper archaeological digs, scientific dating of the pigments, and input from the local tribal communities who have kept these stories alive for generations. Until that happens, the mystery remains. These stories might have started as spiritual lessons, warnings to stay away from certain places, or metaphors for change and growing up. However, as seen through today's eyes, they take on a different meaning. They begin to sound like stories of alien encounters. That idea is still controversial in academic circles, but it's gaining interest in the world of alternative archaeology. They were made using natural materials like red ochre, white clay, and charcoal. Thanks to the dry climate and the protection of the caves, the images are still in good shape, even after thousands of years. To most archaeologists, these figures probably represent shamans wearing special clothes or masks during rituals. But it's hard to ignore how much they look like modern images of aliens, especially the so-called greys, with big heads and blank faces. Bhagat is careful not to jump to conclusions. He doesn't say the figures are aliens, but he doesn't rule it out either. We can't ignore the possibility that prehistoric people just imagined these things, he said. Humans tend to dream up such ideas. Nevertheless, researchers have found very old images all over the world, some over 10,000 years old, that show figures and shapes that look a lot like today's ideas of aliens and advanced technology. One of the most talked about examples of ancient mysterious art is in Tassili Aja, Algeria. There, a famous figure known as the Great Martian God shows a large human-like being with what looks like a helmet or mask. In northern Italy's Val Camonica, carvings show figures with lines coming out of their heads. Some people think they look like antennae or strange headgear. In Australia, Aboriginal Wandjina paintings show large, mouthless beings with round white faces and big dark eyes. And in Japan, the ancient Jomon-era Doge figurines, clay statues with big goggles and round, bulky bodies, have made many wonder if ancient people were showing something truly unusual. Mainstream archaeologists give more traditional explanations. They say these figures were probably gods, spirits, or shamans, shown in symbolic or stylized ways. The helmets could be masks for ceremonies. The antennae might be rays of light or fancy headdresses. The spacesuits might just be body paint or ritual clothing. Still, even with these explanations, the mystery remains. What were ancient people really trying to show? There's no written text or preserved stories to explain these images clearly. And despite all the studies and comparisons with other cultures, no one knows for sure what these figures meant. As one archaeologist said, just because something looks like something, that doesn't explain it. It means we need to ask better questions. But the similarities are hard to ignore. All around the world, in places that had no contact with each other, we see the same kinds of figures. Beings with large heads and no clear facial features, human shapes with big round torsos or helmets, long arms and legs, and objects in their hands. So, are these similarities just random? Are we just seeing what we want to see because of science fiction? Or could these be shared memories of real beings that ancient humans once saw? Skeptics say this is just pareidolia. That's when our brains see familiar shapes, like faces, in random patterns. But that doesn't explain why these images appear all over the world in sacred art and ancient stories and have lasted for thousands of years. If we're open to the idea that some of these ancient images might be more than just symbols, maybe based on real experiences, then the Chhattisgarh cave paintings aren't so unusual after all. They could be one piece of a much bigger puzzle, part of an ancient story, written in stone all across the earth, just waiting for us to finally notice. Some think we could see these beings appear in real life soon. Interestingly, researchers have recently found a group of ancient cave paintings that might actually work like a calendar. They believe these paintings, located in areas like Bastar and Charama, could represent cycles of time, much like how the Mayans used their calendars or how other ancient cultures recorded astronomy in rock art. They say their Chhattisgarh paintings point to specific future years, possibly between 2030 and 2046. So, if correct, we might be about to witness the return of the beings depicted in these artworks.